So looking at this reading from the first letter of St. John, when St. John is writing in this letter, he's writing to a community that has already been walking in the faith, already been walking in the light. But now there's attacks that are happening from the outside and from the inside. And so when St. John writes, he's reminding them that they have to persevere, they have to abide in the way of the Lord. And you see a lot of things that are very similar to the gospel in which St. John also wrote. To love me means to keep my commandments. Those are always connected. And that's something that is hard for us, I think, as a contemporary society, to connect those two together in a couple different ways. One is we sort of look at love more in the sense of a feeling that's very subjective. I feel something for someone or some cause or something in that sense, but it's a feeling that comes from here and it goes out. And that's a very important part. But if love is based on that, and St. John Paul II would talk about this in his philosophical work, Love and Responsibility, saying that that's sort of a beginning thing that brings this attraction, that brings a couple together. But it can't be founded on that. It can be a starter, or such as like a cause, for instance. If there's something that just moves you and you're sort of brought to that cause for the sake of justice. But if it's only based on the feelings are subjective, so there is a possibility that you might be deceived by the feeling. But also a feeling is something that comes and goes. And many of our particularly our young couples, and this is probably where some of the crisis that came during the sexual revolution of the 60s and 70s is regarding love as merely a feeling. And there isn't necessarily that stability of saying, I love you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you all the days of my life. But it became more focused on, I will love you as long as you make me feel good. And the moment you stop making me feel good, well then I'm entitled in my own autonomy and my own individuality to find that person who can best help me actualize me. Do you see how there's a certain selfishness that's there? There's not a desire to suffer. There's not a desire to lay down one's life for the other because it's focused on that feeling aspect. And again, feelings are very important. They truly are given to us by God, but they can't be the foundation. And it's the same thing that's talking about a marriage situation, but in friendship, it's the same kind of situation. If someone maybe challenges you, maybe out of your for your own welfare, you might say, well, you don't make me feel you don't make me feel good, so I'm going to reject you and find someone else who will affirm me in my feeling, but not necessarily what I need. We also see this in the midst of the reality of the church and parish. Many times we come and we use that expression to be fed. And we say, I'm not being fed. And that's a very important. The subjective part is important, but sometimes we forget that we're coming to receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Lord. And if that's not enough for us, and we say, well, I'm not being fed, so I'm not coming to receive. Because we build it on, am I getting good feelings? Is there something that's kind of moving subjectively within me? And again, all of that's important, but we can't base our relationship with the church and with Jesus Christ through the church, just on whether this feels good or not. Because there are some times in which you might be called to come to Mass, and it might be the last thing you want to do. You want to say, I want to sleep, or this is boring right now. Or the priest goes on and on and on and on. Or I don't like the style of music. Or it's too hot, it's too cold, it's, whatever. And granted, this is a very unique time right now. And there is, great prudence in discernment of whether to be able to come or not. But after this time goes, there's a really important moment when we start moving back into that obligatory status to say, am I merely living out my faith because of how it makes me feel? Or am I living out my faith because it's the right thing to do? Because God gave his life for me, and he wants to renew that covenant every single time I come to Holy Communion. And so it's so much deeper than a feeling. And yet if we're rooted on that, then there can be a blossoming of something that includes the feeling, but it's not based on the feeling. That's what St. John is getting at here. We need to love him and know him by keeping his commandments, by following in his light, whether it's uncomfortable or not. And we have to be careful not to fall into the blindness that we don't even realize we're blind. When we start not even realizing that we're judging things according to how it makes me feel. And we might actually think that we're doing a really good thing, saying, well, I'm going to where I feel Jesus. And sometimes, very sadly, that can lead people away from the Eucharist to maybe another sort of subjective experience, which again is all good, but it's missing the meat and potatoes in favor of the cookie instead. When we have the meat and potatoes, the cookie tastes so much better because we're eating it in that proper sequence. And so let's ask during this Christmas time, because again, Christmas could become more of feeling, more sentimentality. And again, all that stuff is very good. Gingerbread man, and chocolate, and chestnuts roasting by an open fire. But if that's what Christmas is based on, versus the truth of Jesus Christ becoming small and becoming food for us to eat, then Christmas can easily be something that just comes and goes. But if it's rooted in the sense that every single Mass is an expression of Christmas, then you can keep Christmas in your heart year-round in a way that doesn't shake whether there's a pandemic or not, whether chocolate is out in Walmart or it's overflowing. Let's be rooted in the depth of what it means to be Catholic and allow the Eucharist to be our anchor stone so that everything else becomes merely icing on the cake.